Appreciate your joining us, Mr. Chidambaram. I want to come to what you've said today. You have said we sincerely hope the governor of Rajasthan will obey the law and only the law. He must remember that he has no other masters except the constitution and the law. Are you suggesting, Mr. Chidambaram, in some way that the governor of Rajasthan is acting under pressure and not within the law, that he is acting in an unconstitutional manner?
Well, that's an unfortunate conclusion one has to draw. Because if he has read the judgment in Nabam Rabia's case, 2006, volume 8, Supreme Court cases, page 1, and particularly paragraph 162, it's been made abundantly clear that in calling an assembly session, the governor has no discretion whatsoever. He must act on the aid and advice of the Chief Minister and the Council of Ministers. So the fact that he's raising questions and he seems to think that he has a discretion, he's obviously not applying his mind. Someone else, somewhere else is applying his or her mind and instructing him.
No, are you saying that the governor is acting under pressure from the centre, is acting as an agent of the centre? Let's be clear, because Ashok Gehlot, the Rajasthan Chief Minister, is claiming that the governor is acting under pressure from the centre, from the Modi government. Is that a charge that you're also making today?
I cannot say who is applying pressure on him. Is the central government applying pressure, or the BJP leadership is applying pressure, or the local state BJP is applying pressure? I cannot say. All I can say is that he does not seem to be acting independently and in obedience to the law. And I repeat, the law is his only master, and he must go back and revisit the judgment which I quoted, paragraph 162.
Sir, I want to quote from what the governor's letter is back to the Chief Minister. He has put 3 queries today. What is the urgency of holding a session without a 21-day notice? Is the government planning to hold a trust vote during the session? If the session is held, what is the government's plan to implement social distancing during COVID times? Are you telling me that the governor cannot ask these questions?
No, he cannot. He cannot ask these questions. That is a discretion. That is the authority given by the Constitution to the Council of Ministers. See, please understand, just as much the governor is a constitutional authority, the Council of Ministers is also a constitutional authority. It is mentioned in the Constitution, a Council of Ministers headed by the Chief Minister. Therefore, a constitutional authority, after looking at both arguments, the Supreme Court has held categorically that this power, this authority rests in the Council of Ministers, and the governor simply has to act on the aid and advice of the Council of Ministers. That's been resolved. It's no longer an open question.
Mr. Chidambaram, the fact though is that surely the governor is at least entitled to ask the Chief Minister, what is the emergency? Why do you want to call a session? Because Mr. Gehlot, the Chief Minister, is not even making it clear whether he wants to hold a trust vote. So is the governor not even having that minimum discretion?
No, he does not have it. He has to call a session. The agenda is set by the House Business Committee and finalized by the Speaker. There are other constitutional authorities to set the agenda for the session and to approve it. The governor has no role to play. Why is the governor usurping the role of the Business Affairs Committee of the House? Why is he usurping the role of the Speaker?
Sir, but the fact is that look at the way the Congress has responded. You all are gherawing Raj Bhavans. You've got the Chief Minister threatening that people will come to the gates of Raj Bhavan if the governor doesn't call a session. So in a way, the Congress also seems to have decided to take the battle against a constitutional functionary like the governor to the streets.
No, but you're making the governor as though he's God. The governor is not God. The governor is a constitutional authority with certain functions, and many functions are excluded from his purview. And if the governor does not respond to advice of the Council of Ministers, which is really a constitutional request, he has no option but to accede to that advice and call the session. Political statements will be made. We are not living in an apolitical world. Don't mix up political statements with the legal import of those statements. Nobody get out the Raj Bhavan. They came and sat on the lawn for a few hours. Then they left.
No, the Congress party today, the Congress party today in different parts of the country wanted to gherao Raj Bhavans. I just want to understand this. Are you all claiming
we
that...
are not gherauing Raj Bhavans. We are protesting in front of Raj Bhavans. We are not gherauing Raj Bhavans. You are misunderstanding the word gherao.
Mr. Chidambaram, the argument, of course, will be made is that while today you are accusing the BJP of misusing the governor's office, that's exactly what they accused you of when you were in power. You were there. Indira Gandhi, Ram Lal, accused of forcing MLAs to parade themselves in front of the Raj Bhavan. Now it's, the shoe is on the other foot, as they say. Do you agree with that?
For heaven's sake, the media must stop this whataboutery argument. When we point out a grave constitutional error today, the argument is, what about 1962? What about 1972? What is the relevance of all that? Imagine it's a matter in the year 2020, somebody stands up and says, what about Abraham Lincoln? What about Thomas Jefferson? They had slaves. Is that relevant today? Let's talk about today. If something wrong happened earlier, they paid a price for that, and the Supreme Court has declared the law. Now that the Supreme Court has declared the law, why doesn't this government abide by the law? Why do you follow a bad example or a wrong example? Follow the right example. You set a right example.
Sir, because then the Congress party cannot take the moral high ground. Then the Congress party today can't take the moral high ground simply because the Congress party is accused of being the original sinner.
I am not taking any moral high ground. I'm simply telling the law as I read it. The law is binding on the governor. It's binding on you, it's binding on me, it's binding on every authority in India. I'm asking the governor to follow the law. I'm not taking any moral high ground. I'm standing firmly on terra firma.
How would you respond to those who say that the real problem is within the Congress? This is an implosion within the Congress. Settle it within your own party. The governor, can be blamed today for not calling a session, but the real problem is within your party, the so-called Pilot and Gaylord camp.
Of course, there is a problem within our party. But who lit the fire? The fire was lit by agents of the BJP. According to the Chief Minister, there is evidence of that. There are tapes. There is an investigation going on. If you light a fire and the fire catches in a part of your house, and we are now telling the governor we have to put out the fire. Now, please, we're calling the fire engine to put out the fire. The governor should not turn around and ask, why are you calling the fire engine? What is the emergency today? Why don't you call the fire engine 21 days later? What is the business of the governor to ask those questions? That is not the governor's business. Today, we are entitled to call a session. The Council of Ministers has passed a solemn resolution forwarded to the governor, and the governor must call a session, period.
Sir, but do you agree that, as you said, the original fire in a way has been lit within the Congress? You yourself have been speaking to Sachin Pilot, trying to pacify him. Why has the Congress failed? Is there a failure of the Congress? We can argue about constitutional functionaries, but do you agree that the Congress party itself is imploding? And therefore, that's the other crisis that you will have to deal with.
Congress party is not imploding. We will take care of the Congress party. Congress party, a fire was lit in the Congress party by agents of the BJP. There is a small fire. We will put out the fire. You call a session of the assembly, the fire will be put out.
You're saying agents of the BJP are responsible for lighting this fire. Are you telling me that Sachin Pilot is acting on the behest of the BJP today? Because he denies it.
He can deny it for all it's worth. I spoke to him last about 10, 12 days ago. Now, why is he silent about calling a session? If Mr. Sachin Pilot is so committed to the Constitution, he should also say, yes, of course. The Chief Minister has called a session. Please call a session. Why is he silent? Imagine, look at the players. The Congress party says call a session. The BJP goes a delegation to the governor to say, no, don't call a session. And Mr. Sachin Pilot is silent. Why doesn't Mr. Sachin Pilot say the Congress party is right, the Council of Ministers are right, and therefore you must call a session? What he will do in his session, is his business. Why is he silent? Should he not take a position? You're asking me to take a position. I've taken a position. Why doesn't Mr. Pilot take a position?
You know, let's be very clear. Mr. Pilot, till the other day, was one of your poster boys, one of your Gen Next poster boys. What does it suggest? That the Congress party somewhere has been unable in a way to accommodate conflicting interests. Somewhere you've got to accept that, Mr. Chidambaram, that, you know, we saw it with Jyotiraditya Scindia in Madhya Pradesh and now a Sachin Pilot in Rajasthan.
Whether I accept it or not is irrelevant to the question before us. For the sake of argument, let me accept that we were not able to maintain harmony within the party, and a small number, Mr. Pilot and 18 others he claims, have stepped aside, and they have not made it clear whether they will join the BJP or whether they remain in the Congress or whether they will float a third party. Let's accept that for the sake of argument. What has that got to do with the governor calling a session? Why are we taking the eye off the ball?
No, so why do you want to call the session? Let me ask you this. Why do you want to call the session? Is it to prove the majority? Then say so. Why doesn't Ashok Gehlot say that I want to prove my majority?
Said it. Mr. Gehlot has said it in a press conference. He's told the media. He's made a statement.
Governor says he's not written it in his letter to him.
He's not obliged to. Show me any authority which says in the resolution of the Council of Ministers, you must set out the agenda to the governor. Show me any precedent.
Hello everyone, this is Rahul Kamal here. Hope you enjoyed this video. For the latest news and analysis, like and subscribe the India Today YouTube channel and don't forget to press the bell icon to stay updated.